Everyone, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. Welcome to my Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. That's what we call this show, the secret podcast, the thing you're listening to now. If you happen to be here with us, thank goodness you found us. You found us on YouTube at Emil Amok1. You found us on Twitter, perhaps, at Emil Amok, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok. You found us maybe on Facebook at fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Maybe, I guess those are the places. Soon in Instagram. I think, soon we're going to go live on Instagram. Not today, but soon. Anyway, welcome to today, Friday's program. Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez will be with me, as he is on most Fridays, talking about the news. It's been, when I first got on with him, we were talking, he said, God, what a week it's been. It's been a week. It's still happening. I think people want to cram things in to before the end of the year. This is what's happening. And you got this big court case that's come down the pike within the last 30 minutes. We're going to talk about that. We got some stuff that really belongs in the WDAAT category. What does an Asian American think? Because they didn't ask us. And we'll tell you what we think about this new poll. But I want to begin by talking about Shohei Ohtani still, because look, Shohei Ohtani is like the biggest thing to happen to baseball, because he is really the second coming of Babe Ruth. Only he's better. Only he's Asian. And it's really kind of incredible when you think about it. Just a few short years ago, I was on this program, my very program, and I was writing on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund site, aldef.org/blog, writing about Shohei and how Stephen A. Smith was like railing out against Major League Baseball, the All-Star game, saying, here it is, the All-Star break a couple of years ago. He said, and all we have for baseball is a guy who's Japanese, who speaks through an interpreter. I mean, really, honestly. Now, I railed out against Stephen A. and that kind of reaction. Other members of AAJA, the Asian American Journalists, railed out against Stephen A. Stephen A. invited some Asian American journalist members, or one in particular, to come talk to him about why he was so ham-handed about the whole thing. But I continued to rail out against Stephen A. And now here we are, a couple of years later, and, Stephen A.'s eating his words, because if he's going to talk about baseball, he can't talk about baseball without talking about Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani, the face of baseball. $700 million, 10-year contract, most of that money deferred, which I like to say is the new way of union busting, or a new way of management, in where the workers are in on the deal, saying, hey, look, you can defer my pay if you can help me get other workers here to help us win a championship. I mean, that's sort of like we're all in this together. Does not Shohei Ohtani know he's dealing with American capitalism? To enable the capitalists in this way, in a nice way, to defer his salary? I don't know. I hope it doesn't backfire. Now I know why I was underpaid all these years when I was working in broadcasting. It's because my broadcast managers were deferring my salary without my permission. So that kind of upsets me. But I was very, very happy for us as Asian Americans, because we have an Asian American tilted show here. Very happy because Shohei will be the face of baseball. I have some ideas, some words to share about that. I'll put them on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund blog, this weekend. So catch it there. Just some thoughts that I think are worth ruminating, because baseball is going through this change. Okay. Second story I want to get into before you bring up Professor Dan is how this came down just like within the last half hour. The headline in the New York Times: jury orders Giuliani to pay $148 million to election workers he defamed. Now, if you haven't been following the story, we've been talking about Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss ever since the January 6 hearings, because they were the Atlanta or the Georgia election workers who were being pilloried by the MAGA right, led by Giuliani, saying these are the people who helped steal the election from Donald Trump. They were vilified. They were defamed as found in a court of law. And today, a jury came back to say, for that defamation, this is what Rudy Giuliani, formerly known as America's mayor, now known as America's defamer, this is what he deserves to pay. And the headline is astonishing. A jury orders Giuliani to pay $148 million to these election workers. Damages. This is in a federal court. And so remember Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Ruby Freeman was a volunteer helping out her daughter, Shay Moss, who was an election worker. And you remember Shay Moss went before the January 6th committee and said, I can't go out. I can't, I got to not say my name, because if people hear who I am and they're MAGA types, they think, oh, you're the one who stole the election from Trump. This is why it's dangerous, because there are people who believe everything Rudy Giuliani said. There are people who believe that, yes, the election was stolen. There are still election deniers out there today who think the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And if you want to know, well, who did it? And then here's Giuliani saying, well, it was these election workers in Georgia, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. A judge earlier found that Giuliani was wrong, that he was defaming Freeman and Moss. And today, just today, a jury came back and said, for that defamation, Rudy Giuliani owes $148 million for saying that these two women, these innocent women, were trying to steal a victory away from Donald Trump in the 2020 election. This is a huge award. According to the Times, the jury awarded Ms. Freeman and Ms. Moss a combined $75 million in punitive damages. It also ordered Mr. Giuliani to pay compensatory damages of $16.2 million to Ms. Freeman, $16.9 million to Ms. Moss, as well as $20 million to each of them for emotional suffering. This is real. Now you say, come on, Emil. This is kind of hyperbolic, isn't it? No, I mean, when you see what a life is worth, and a life, look at what kind of insurance policies you can get on a life. 1, 2 million. I mean, for like just a basic life. But now you take the potential of that life, or what it can do, what it can earn, and now you, as a defamer of these people, have now limited their right to earn, their right to be free, their right to have their name out there in public because you have defamed them. I mean, an initial estimate before the jury came back was like, yeah, maybe 45 million in damages would be fair. Now a jury has come back and you see it outlined, the compensatory damages, the punitive damages, and it amounts to $148 million. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I hope Giuliani coughs it up because he brought it on himself. And I hope that Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman collect because they deserve they deserve those damages. They deserve the awards that the jury has given them for the damages that they have had to endure. So, this is something that we all, no matter what color, ethnicity, this is what happens in a democracy when there's justice. And we got to celebrate it. Now, part of the battle will be, can they collect? Because Giuliani's pleading poverty. It will. He probably will go bankrupt, plead poverty. Will they ever see a dime? Let's hope they see a dime. Because I don't want to see Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss have to live off symbolic victory, symbolic justice. I want them to be made whole. And it bothers me when a blowhard like Giuliani can get away with this. Let's bring up Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, my friend.
How dare you defame America's mayor
Yeah, well,
who stood gallantly
hold on.
on the pile of rubble
Let me give you,
after 9/11?
yeah, exactly. Well, let me give you your full props. College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Professor Emeritus, Asian American Studies, and an observer of the news, my friend and a friend of the show. And now you're saying, how dare I defame Giuliani, huh?
Yes, yes. Well, I'm obviously, people might not know I'm being very facetious. Facetious. Ooh, bless you.
Sorry about that.
Bless
Sorry
you.
about that.
Anybody hit?
I had to,
Was there anybody near you?
I had to sneeze at your facetiousness. All right,
Yeah,
so
facetious. Yeah,
Dan,
yeah. That would provoke many people's allergies.
yes. So
Um,
so tell me why?
yeah, yeah. I did you buy it? I mean, did you buy it when he was standing on that mound of rubble, and with the former President Bush too? You know, as and people were glorifying the dude for what?
Yeah.
And his actions towards these two plaintiffs, now successful plaintiffs,
Mhm.
right, were rooted in racism.
Yeah. And-
It was all over. Everything that he said was not so subtle racist commentary. I mean, it was right up there with the references in the '80s to recipients of general assistance as welfare
Yeah.
queens. What was everybody? What when I was talking about in my class, I said, let's see who the welfare queens are, and I went to the stats, and the stats showed that the single biggest group of recipients of welfare were single mothers,
Well,
and that the biggest category of single mothers by race was white.
yeah. Yeah.
And I said, doesn't it only make sense since the African American population overall is less than 15% of the total population in American society, right? Why would you think that the majority of people on welfare assistance of any kind, including child support, right,
Mhm.
right, were black?
Well, this is the stereotype that is built up by the racist stereotypes are promoted by the racist political leaders like Giuliani. And, a lot of people who remember that day when, he was glorified for his swift action at 9/11 and saving New York, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, they're just marveling at how, or the marveling is the wrong word. They're just disappointed to see how far Giuliani has fallen to now where, because he has defamed two innocent black women, he is now forced to maybe give up. I don't know how much of a fortune he has, but can does Shay Moss and Ruby
No, he
Freeman?
ain't got it. I doubt that he's worth more than 20 million
But
bucks. I
will
think
they see?
I think they ought to let him. I think they ought to let him write a book and see if anybody buys it. But everybody's going to know that money is going to go as damages, right,
Hmm,
and a payout to these two plaintiffs. One of the things I really like about the jury's decision in this case is that the greatest amount of damages paid out to these two plaintiffs is 75 million in punitives. That's the biggest single category of payments. And I think that is completely well deserved.
Well, what
You
now?
know,
The different now. You went to law school. You're a JD. Now, what is the difference between punies, the punitives, and the compensatory damages, and why is
Com-
it significant?
yeah, compensatory damages are directly related to actual harm. Okay, so there has to be some kind of loss, either pecuniary, something evidenced by medical attention, psychiatric, psychological services. Those are actual
Mm,
damages. Okay, for which compensation can be estimated. Okay, then there's emotional suffering, which is much more difficult, right, to ascertain in terms of a dollar amount. And believe it or not until the late 1960s and really the early 70s was emotional suffering even taken seriously in most states.
yeah.
Most states were still not compensating people for direct emotional suffering because they said, it's difficult to estimate what the value is of a person's emotional suffering, and we have to take each person as an individual, different degrees of suffering, standards of self-described
Well, wait a
suffering.
minute, Dan.
So they were against it. Most courts were against awards for emotional suffering. So we got that here.
Dan, Dan. If we got 20 million to each of them for emotional suffering, could that be, eh, equal to 20 million each for racism, or the feeling that
uh,
the feeling of the stings of discrimination? Could that be
yeah,
emotional suffering?
yeah. Well, racism is definitely a provocative or motivating factor, right?
Mhm.
In terms of what they suffered. Well, what they suffered were hundreds of death threats, right? And what they suffered was the isolation, the real isolation. We're talking about a physical isolation from the general society because they feared for their safety.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right. They did
and
talk about just, retreating, never going out. Their diets were all crazy because they couldn't eat, they couldn't go to the store. I mean, there's suffering. There was suffering there.
yeah, yeah, and that's not emotional. That's not just emotional. Okay, that's actually compensatory. That's in actual damages because all they have to do is show that that kind of suffering, that physical suffering, right, was a direct result of the defamation. That's all they got to do.
Okay, so that's compensatory things you can
That's right.
show. Now, what about the punitive damages? 75 million
Well,
combined. What
that's
what is
that's
the difference
based
there?
on yeah, that's based on the actions of the defendant. How serious were the actions of defendant in their intent, right, to harm? Okay.
Mm,
How careless were they? Even you can even go with gross negligence, right?
mm,
How careless were they, or how wanton were they, which is that area between serious intent and lack of intent, right? Just negligence, right?
yeah.
And in this instance, 75 million, I think, is representative of how the jury felt about how seriously Giuliani wanted to harm these people.
So
That's what it comes down to.
his
The
intent
seriousness
was
of the harm.
his intent
It
was
was
yeah,
intentional.
not just to say, oh, look what these these people stole the election from Donald Trump, but he really wanted to put them out front, to hurt them, and they did receive the kind of pain from from the MAGA supporters who said, "Oh, you're responsible for Trump losing. You're responsible for you were stealing the election for." I mean, this is why it's not, why this is serious stuff, because there are people who believe Giuliani.
Yes, and he used again racism, underlying racism, to impugn their credibility as election workers.
Yeah.
So the jury is not only influenced by the fact that he was impugning them from a racial position, right?
Mhm.
They were also looking at the fact that that is exemplary of racism towards anyone who's not white who's working as an election worker. That's really what it comes down to. Who is generally threatened, who is generally now questionable
Yeah.
from the eyes of racists,
Yeah.
right? And it's any person who's not white that's working on an election. That's the effect of this. What about the carry-on effect of people not wanting to be election workers.
Well, this goes to the right to the issue of, do you believe in our democracy enough to work for it? Do you believe in our democracy to volunteer and to make it to see that it does work? But
The possible risk that you would be attacked,
yeah, well, that's the
not only
thing.
verbally but perhaps physically.
That's the thing. I mean, the intimidation factor that this poses. People see this and, oh, I don't want to be Ruby Moss. I don't want to be Shay Moss or Ruby Freeman. The intimidation factor is enough to say, to have people stay at home, not participate, not even
Yes.
vote. I mean, that really, it's a voter
Yeah,
suppression
that's
thing,
right.
right?
That's right.
Democracy suppression. I mean, that's the real the real
Well,
harm here.
Giuliani has been a participant in that too.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody that was a participant in supporting Trump were participants in all of the above strategies, and you've mentioned two of them already.
yeah,
At the root of all of this is the fear among Republican, members of Congress. Their fear not only of Trump. I mean, he's such a wannabe gangster. You know how you can tell he's fake gangsters?
oh, how's that?
They're all still
Oh,
alive.
yeah.
If he was a real gangster, there'd be some death amongst them.
Yeah.
Believe me. Okay.
Well, all right. So we have this award coming down, 148 million. Giuliani must pay to Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss. What are the chances that the two African American women who were awarded this, what are the chances they will see the money?
They'll see some money. Okay. And if I were the court, I would push real hard on immediate payment of significant amount of money. And his lawyers are already giving him up, right? I mean, he said so many stupid things in the last week
Yeah.
that,
Well,
that his lawyers
the
they're
dead
giving him
giveaway,
up, man.
was, here's Giuliani saying, okay, I lost in court, so I will say all that I want to say in the court of public opinion. So he goes out and has these impromptu press conferences, spills the beans, says things like, yeah, I got the evidence. You stay tuned. I got the
Well,
evidence.
everything I said was
Yeah.
true. Well, which time? When you were in
Well,
court,
he says, yeah,
or right now when you're outside of
he
court?
says, like, yeah, everything I say, I got the evidence. Stay tuned. And then he never produces it. And then when he gets
He's taking Comer
right,
lessons,
and
man.
when he gets a chance to testify, he chooses not to. Why? Because that's under oath. That would be lying. That would be even that would add to all the things that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the judge is saying, "Wait a minute, did he just defame these two plaintiffs
Yeah.
again?"
Well, this is the thing.
And the answer is yes, he
Yeah,
did. But what are you gonna do? Can you get blood out of a
yeah.
rock? I mean, he's not a rock. I mean, he's got some money. He's probably worth several $1,000,000, and hopefully they'll get a taste of that before they get too old.
Well,
You know,
I feel sad for it looks like a half Asian guy who's his right hand man, his
yeah.
man valet or his man servant. You see him in all the pictures. I don't. I mean,
What is it? Is this the thing among the reaps, man? I
yeah,
know, I know. I was
his
thinking the
half
same thing.
Asian manservant. I mean, he's in every.
Oh, that's. Please don't do
Well,
that.
I
I
mean,
mean,
this is what it was. I mean, in my father's
you
day,
make me feel like I gotta put a white
in
towel over
my
my left arm.
father's day, and your father's day, the Filipinos were, they were.
My father started out in this country as a dishwasher, so don't be giving that manservant
Well, but
stuff.
houseboys, manservants. I mean, a lot of the people came in boats with my father. It,
Hey, my favorite uncles, fictive and
yeah.
otherwise, were valets.
Well,
You know,
look, it's fine. I'm going to start a thing called Real Houseboys of the Philippines, and that's going to be a show. That's going to be a thing.
people don't realize when I was at political events, I always volunteered to be a bartender
Yeah.
or somebody or a server, and the reason is you get to work the crowd,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if you're a bartender, the crowd works you. They come to you. They're going to get thirsty,
Oh, yeah, yeah. And
and so they come to you. So I always volunteered for that, and they would ask me, "Why do you do this?" And you're not out here working the crowd. I said, "No." I said, "Well, actually, it's kind of genetically built in. I come from a long line,
Yeah.
of people who wore white towels over their left
Oh
arm.
yeah, I'm telling you. Look, my dad too. All my uncles, and it was seen as a sometimes if you were with the white towels, it was seen as a promotion, right? Because
Hey, it beat the hell out of washing
yeah,
dishes.
well, my father was a cook. My father, made it to the pantry, but he wanted to make it into the bedroom with the houseboys. That would have been, you get housing. They don't give you housing if you're a cook.
Yeah, I had a fictive uncle, Felix, who
Yeah,
who got me the best gifts for my birthdays and Christmas
yeah.
gifts. And he was not I wouldn't call him a houseboy, but he was definitely a valet cook.
Valley cook, house. Well, like I said, it's a term of endearment. I mean, but most of the guys who, if they were coming from Locos on the boat to San Francisco with my dad, they were here to be either working the fields or houseboys in the suburbs of San Francisco.
While I was in high school, there was a gentleman who was a townmate of my father's, and he stayed with us when he was in the city.
Yeah,
Okay, but he lived down in San Jose or in Salinas on weekends. But
yeah.
while he was in the city working, and you know what family he worked for? The Aliotos.
Ooh, the Aliotas.
When he was still married to Angelina,
Oh, good Catholic
and
family.
and and they had the house in Presidio Terrace, right? And so I have, let's put it this way. Joe Alioto's sons went to SI as well, which is, of course, where I graduated from. And let's just say, I had an insight into family stuff that a lot of other people don't know, and that I always kept confidence. I kept it in confidence. I don't like playing that way, especially for politicos.
Until
And
today. Until
until today,
no.
I have
All
not.
right, all
I
right.
have never divulged any of the
I
stuff
will. We'll
that I
we'll
heard.
spare the details, but look, I hope, getting back to the main topic, I hope that whoever this guy is, I hope he doesn't get short shrifted, by in pay by Giuliani. I mean,
How do you know he's not part of the legal staff?
well, that's true. He could be. He could be a Giuliani family member. All I know is I see him in all the press.
Yeah, yeah.
He's at all the press
There's a lot of
conferences.
there's a lot of out marriage and in marriage going on there.
He's always behind, and like if there's rain, he's there with the umbrella. I know what that's like. I know that he must call this guy Giuliani boss, because I have witnessed that in Washington, that dynamic, and I just hope that he doesn't get screwed when.
It must be a reap thing, huh? It must be a
Oh
reap
yeah,
thing. What are the Democrats who have this kind of class attitude? Who do they hire?
uh, you know,
Because we haven't been suspicious
Biden
about Asians following them around.
Biden had that Korean American Secret Service guy. I don't see him anymore. Um, I don't know, but I mean, it's just noticeable. It's just noticeable. It's just me because I do this show, this micro talk show on Asian American issues, and
Yeah, well, we got to talk about Pablo
yeah,
Torre every once in a while as well,
yeah.
man.
Well, I like
He's
Pablo.
really
I
good.
like Pablo.
He's a brother. He's a brother, man.
I like Pablo. I like
I,
Pablo.
I really like him. I
Yeah,
think
all
his accurate. He's really accurate. As
yeah,
acerbic as he can be, he's really accurate. And number two, he's funny as hell.
yeah.
He's got a
He's good.
great sense of humor.
He's good. Look, the thing about Pablo is, all right. No more about Pablo. Let's talk about Pablo.
We'll go to Pablo when we talk about Ohtani.
Yeah.
You've already talked about Ohtani.
Yeah, I know. Well, I just think that it's important to get the. I'm going to write about Otani too,
Okay.
and that's an important thing, Otani, because what it means that we've turned a corner. I think maybe not, but let's talk about, in terms of turning the corner. Let's talk about this thing here, the North Pole.
The North Pole.
One of the
NORC.
yeah,
For
one of
those
the
of you
things
who want to look it up.
one of the things I like to say is, it's we are this show is WDAAT. What does an Asian American think? Because they never ask us about things like the North Pole. It's Newark Center for Public Affairs. Newark Center. It's not Chicago. It's University of California, Riverside. That's where they got the funding. Associated Press. And so they interviewed people in November, and they interviewed Asian Americans, right? Now, here's the sampling, and this is probably important. 1,115 Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander adults in the U.S.
That's a good sample.
Yeah, for a margin of error of 4.4%, 95% confidence level. But here's what they don't say, and here's what's significant. They do not say that it was in language. They do not say that it was how well. They might say in later data points how many Asians or how many Chinese, how many Filipino. But here it's just broad, and it doesn't say if they did anything in language. I think that's significant that they didn't, because some other polls, notably the ALDEF poll, is in language. It's an exit poll,
Right.
but in language, and that's significant. So there's always some kind of compromise that pollsters, have to use in order to get the job done. It's expensive to poll 1,115 people and have them all be Asian, but are you doing it in language, or are you doing it just in English? I mean, that's kind of a key.
Yep. Yep.
It sounds like they're doing it generally in English. All right.
Well, you remember how this goes. As a journalist, when you look for this kind of data, you always have to ask the question. What was it a randomized selection? Right.
Random is everything. Random tends to
right.
forgive everything. However, a randomized sample of just English-speaking Asian Americans by
That's
phone.
right.
I mean, that's a different kind of demographic.
That's
You're
right.
not going to get, first generation just immigrated within the last 10
That's
years
right.
necessarily. So, these are all things. Look, we're glad that we show up. We're glad that they're doing it.
Yep.
But, just one of the things you got to watch out for. Okay, now, first question.
Oh, it was Chicago, by the way. It was but money went to Chicago from UC.
Okay.
It was funded by UC Riverside, but Newark in Chicago
Is
ran the poll.
Newark out of Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Well, the Newark
Yep.
Center, that's a big deal. They work with AP. So, okay.
Well, Chicago is also known as, University of Chicago, bastion, right, of liberal thought.
Liberal. I know some people would disagree with that. Milton Friedman came from there. He was a neocon, free marketer.
Yep. Yep.
So I would say they're just a highly intellectualized place that often gets left out of the Ivy equation.
And how about Noam Chomsky? Doesn't he have something to do with
I don't know if
Chicago?
he was out of there. I think he taught at Harvard for a while.
He did. Oh, for sure.
PhD, I think.
Well, all of those guys taught at Harvard for a while.
Well,
as the thing.
Okay, let's go to the question. First question.
Yes. Yes.
They asked this of Asians. Generally speaking, would you say things in this country are heading in the, and the question is right direction or wrong direction?
Yep.
And look at this. I mean, it shows that most people believe. They asked, let's see, 110650. How do you read this? 61523?
Yeah. That's November 6th.
November 6th.
Through the 15th. So for 9 days they polled people.
Uh-huh.
And they polled 1,115 people.
And 32 said the right direction. 68 said the wrong direction.
Yep. So compared to U.S. adults, they have a higher wrong direction count, like 81.
Yeah.
Compared to 68. I think that's pretty good. I think, what does it mean though, for wrong direction? And when you look at Kerr 2, 3, 3A, and 3B right below, you can see what kind of questions they asked. So right next to, is this a randomized sampling, comes the question about the questions. How did you ask the questions? Right?
Well, all right, but I think so. Let's just look at the data in front of us. So the Asian Americans, 68 said wrong direction, but compared to all U.S. adults, that's a little better because all the U.S. adults said 81% that we're
That's
heading in
right.
the wrong direction. I think it shows that Asian Americans slightly more optimistic or slightly more democratic is really, I think, what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
That's a way of looking at it.
and I think,
Um,
and I think, Dan, if they ask,
I didn't like the questions. I didn't like the way they phrased the questions,
well,
but it's cool.
I think I sort of agree with you there too. But just on the question, are we going in the right direction, wrong direction, up, down, thumb up, thumb down? I think we are going in the right direction. I think,
Okay, wait, that's your opinion. We're
right,
going in the right direction.
right. That is
I also agree. So then the question is, why are so many Asian Americans across the board, right, saying we're going in the wrong direction?
I don't know.
Is it because they're looking at the left and saying, they're picking on the wrong issues and they're not communicating well?
Yeah.
Are they saying that actual Biden achievements in the past 3 years have taken us into a bad place? That overall, he's not doing a decent job. Is that what they're looking at, or are they looking at the resistance coming from the right and so-called moderate political
See,
forces?
I
Right?
think, you know, generally speaking, Asian Americans are more optimistic, and they're not as. I think it shows maybe we're not as greedy and as political as some others, as the general U.S. adult population, because I think, you know, Asians, when they come here, if we're moving in the, I mean, if we see some positive signs, and certainly within the last couple days, we've seen a lot of positive signs. Inflation is down, by it's like less than half than what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah. The public really doesn't care though, because what they're worried about is less about gasoline right now, but more about grocery prices and
Right,
stuff like that.
right. But
Right?
I think the Asians are more optimistic because I think it may also be have something to do with they're just a little smarter.
Oh shit!
I mean,
Oh
I just think
no!
in terms of, you know, what's this mean to me, and are we really
Is
going in
it
the right
is
direction?
it the rice or the soy sauce? Which
Well,
one?
no,
I
I think
mean,
it's because if they see the stock market's going up, if they see that inflation is lower, if they see that gasoline prices are lower, I think they still have a general sense that things could be better, but a better sense overall than the U.S. population. That's what,
okay,
and also most of
okay.
those,
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that because if they're disapproving because they see the intransigence in Congress, then the secondary question is who's causing the intransigence in Congress, right?
yeah,
And so you can disapprove of Congress, and like I said, I don't like the way they ask the questions. They ask the questions in terms of their approval or disapproval of Biden.
yeah. Well, this is the thing. Everything is all set to overall. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling his job as president?
There it is.
Yeah,
See,
and almost,
they want, when we were off camera, I said, right now the trend is blame it on Joe,
yeah.
right?
Blame it on Joe.
So
Also, when the questions are asked this way, it pretty much says, "Hey, this is the reason why
yeah,
the
exactly,
the, the
it
numbers are
frames
up or
it
down."
frames the
Yeah,
outcome. It frames the freaking
right.
response.
I mean, they could ask, do you feel this way because the weather's bad? You know,
Just is it the economy, right?
yeah,
Is it the international politics? Is it the inability of Congress to come to compromise decisions? There's all kinds of ways you could ask
yeah.
this that would frame it less in terms of Biden.
Well, so I don't even know how to read this. It says, and then there's all these conditionals about how to read this. Uh, it says, where is it? It just, it's just a confusing data thing. Uh,
Yep, yep.
where it says, would you say is if you disapprove in Kerr two, would you say you disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling his job as president strongly, or do you disapprove just somewhat? And so,
It's still hanging it all on Joe.
yeah, and so it's sort of okay. So
It's asking for a degree
yeah,
differentiation,
all right.
but
I
it's
don't like
still
that first question.
hey, that I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right. So now here's this. Now this might be a little better. As far as the people running these institutions are concerned, would you say
Okay,
you have a great deal of confidence, only some
that
confidence,
much better
or
question.
hardly any
Much
confidence?
much better question.
Yes. So this is AAPI talking in Congress. Hardly any confidence at all, 46%. That's high, but not as high as the overall adults, 53. I think there's a general dissatisfaction among Asians, not as bad as the general, but bad. Now, how about the U.S. Supreme Court? Oh, we dislike the Supreme Court more. 39% of Asians say hardly any confidence at all, versus 36 of general. The executive branch of the federal government, we like the executive government a little bit more. And of course, the on hardly any confidence at all, your state government, of course, everyone loves their state government. Only 24% said hardly any confidence at all. What do you make of that, Dan?
Uh, State government.
No, what do you make of the? It looks like they like state
The
government
overall
more.
question.
They
Yeah,
they don't
it's
like the
okay.
feds.
Yeah, it's okay. I think they should have asked separate
Yeah,
questions for especially on state government. They should have asked a separate set of
maybe
questions.
they didn't have enough money. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that could
'Cause,
be it.
yeah,
I don't know.
that's what it boils down to. Your questions, how many swings you get at it, swipes at the apple. Depends on how much money you have. All right, here. How about this?
I see. I find it interesting. If we had a geopolitical map
Mm,
of where these randomly selected participants, right, were
mm,
located,
mm.
then it would make more sense if you would be able to match this essentially only some confidence in state government and then hardly any confidence at all. That's really a low mark, man. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, that's the thing. It's all pretty disappointing when you see that everyone has a degree of we don't have any confidence in Congress,
Yeah,
Supreme Court, the executive branch is a little better. State government, they like their state governments, but that's because many of the state governments are, MAGA Republicans. Unfortunately,
yeah,
that's
that's
why
right.
I stay in California. I don't go to any other place. All right, next question. Now, which party do you trust to do a better job at handling? Wow. All right, so the economy is sort of kind of doesn't really say anything. Just says that hey, we don't know. Neither 29%. So it's like a third. Climate change, student debt, neither. I think they
Well,
like.
how does this compare to you're saying we're smarter? we're where we look at actual factors is what
Yeah.
you were suggesting, right?
Well, look, it says they like the Democrats on climate change. That's right. They like the Democrats on student debt. That's right. On now, the key point, immigration. It seems that they're kind of split on equally
Yeah,
between
yeah.
on immigration.
Well, does that surprise you?
No, it just means that there's some conservatives who, you know, they're on, but we're on both sides, conservative and liberal, on that issue. Just like on the economy, you see, it's kind of more 30-25%. It's kind of like they don't trust anybody. If someone has a plan, I think Asian Americans will go for it. But show me a plan,
Well,
and we don't
but the
have a plan.
Democrats have showed a plan,
Well,
and
they're it does
they're actually executing the plan right now. And I'm looking at street repairs and all kinds of stuff going on right here in the city.
well in terms of infrastructure. Yeah, in terms of student debt, Biden's doing what he can. That's why more people trust the Democrats. Do you trust the
Well,
Democrats on student debt? 44.
yeah, yeah. So it's student debt versus Palestine. For
Oh,
younger voters.
yeah. Okay. Next question. Now, which party do you trust doing a better job?
Wait. One last thing on immigration.
Yeah.
The split on immigration. I'm very familiar with how a lot of people feel, but speaking for my experience with our Filipino American community,
Yeah.
It's almost evenly split. A lot of the people who are against loose immigration, are against it because they feel that a lot of people who entered illegally or overstayed their visas, right, are
Mhm.
breaking the law.
Yeah.
So that attitude is very prevalent among Filipino American communities.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring up that poll because anytime a major outlet, AP with NORC, um, you know, they put out anything on Asian Americans, I think you got to take with a grain of salt. Even this one, even though they polled 1,100, Asian Americans, did they do in language?
I
You know,
like that. I like the next one.
oh, what was
PP
the next
two.
one? Oh, hold on.
PP2 on voting.
All right, let me see the next one. I kind of pulled out early because I thought this is not what I thought. Okay, now which party do you trust to do a better job of handling?
Integrity of voting.
Oh, protecting the integrity of voting. Democrats 43. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Republicans 14. Ensuring that everyone who is eligible to vote is allowed to vote. Democrats. Preventing the spread of
Hey,
misinformation.
man, right down the line. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
I like
Protecting
it.
free speech. Yeah.
That's very promising
Democrats by almost like a 3-1, 4-1 margin.
sometimes. And,
Yeah,
I mean, I like it.
yeah, and only in terms of neither, like they distrust both, preventing the spread of misinformation. I don't know. I guess you know.
Yeah, people, this is one of those places where people have a false equivalency.
Yeah,
That with the both sides do it kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Well, that's good. Which party do you choose? So it seems like this shows the Asian American bias toward the Democrats. How much of a problem is each of the following in U.S. elections? And Asians think people who are eligible not being allowed to vote, major problem. And
Yeah.
they pretty much agree. If you're eligible and you're not allowed to vote, that's a problem. People voting who are not eligible, less of a problem. The spread of misinformation or false information, look at that. 83% say that's a major problem.
Right on.
It is. It is. I
It
mean,
is.
misinformation, you get your
That's
news
big. That's huge.
when you get your news off TikTok, that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
There, 83 efforts to limit free speech about even across the board. So that's important that everyone fears misinformation or false information, which is why no one listens to us, Dan.
Actually, I beg to differ. I've been getting a lot of comments.
Oh, good, good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
How well would you say democracy is working in the United States these days? Well, extremely well, small minority. Most are in the somewhat well, because if we weren't somewhat well, we'd all be imprisoned for our views or something. I mean, there would be something that is so egregious happening that we'd say, nah, it's not working well. 32% though say not too well. 41 say not too well, not at all well. Wow, that's kind of high.
yeah.
That's
It is.
that's
I
a
mean,
lot.
when you look at, you should look at it as a combination and take the three, right? Somewhat well. Not too well and not too well. Not at all well, right? At the net, you got to look at those two, and that's pretty important.
Yeah, so that's almost like 73. Not too
Yeah.
well. And actually, if you
Yep.
include not at all well, that's like in the 80s, 80 something.
Yeah. That's right.
Asians
That's right.
upset.
And they're right. I mean, when it comes down to it, why are Republicans still supporting Trump, or at least looking like they're
Yeah.
supporting Trump?
Well,
And because privately, the majority of Republicans wish that Trump wasn't running,
yeah,
privately. But why? So why are they doing this thing publicly? And the answer is they're not just scared of Trump. Trump is a wannabe gangster. You know who they're really scared of? Their own voters. That's who they're
mm,
scared of,
yeah,
right? How did they get into this mess? Really easy. Suppression of the vote. How do they do that? segmentation,
Yeah.
the use of
Yeah, yeah,
gerrymandering.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing to bring back a story we were talking about earlier, the Giuliani verdict or decision, 100 that he's forced to pay 108, 148 million. That should make you feel good about democracy. That should make you feel good about democracy and justice and fairness, and that when someone lies and pushes out misinformation, because that's what we're talking about, misinformation pushed
Hmm.
out by leaders like Giuliani. We have a system that takes care of that and tries to rectify that. So
Right.
I would have to say that shows our democracy works well enough if you have the stamina to fight for justice.
Well, unfortunately, this is not a position of devil's advocacy. It is just kind of an easy call
Mm,
for me. Um, the size of the award will be criticized, of course, from the
yeah,
right, and it's so big that the right is going to say that's
right,
ridiculous. That that just shows you the amount of bias, right? In that area, you can't get a fair trial,
right. Well,
in that
Giuliani
area.
can't appeal this, right?
Yes, he can. And on appeal, there's probably going to be substantial shrinkage,
Yeah,
right, of the award. But the appeal will the thing that bothers me about the appeal is the same thing that bothers me about Trump's appeals and the appeals of convicted insurrectionists, right, to their obstruction convictions that are being that the Supreme Court has said they're going to hear
yeah,
those cases. And my complaint is that's just going to slow everything down again. So it's just another tool. Is it all completely predictable? Yeah. If you're a lawyer or somebody educated in the law, it is completely
yeah.
predictable. That problem is gonna come up. So the March 4th deadline, all that kind of stuff, it's all in jeopardy at this point. So it looks like the Bragg decision, right, coming out of New York, that's going to come down faster. And I like that. I
Right.
like that.
The
I want to
Bragg,
see. I want to see not just Trump. I want to see his whole freaking family precluded from conducting business any further, not only in Manhattan and in New York City, but in New York State. Because that when anybody says that they are really successful business people, where do you want to have an office and all the rest of that stuff? There's only two places, right? DC and New
yeah,
York City, right? So when they get tossed out of there, not only does it look bad, status wise, right, but it looks bad in terms of overall business
yeah.
credibility,
So
right?
the Bragg decision, that's on a business documents case. That's a felony. Those are
Yeah,
felonies. And
yeah, yep.
that's going to be, I mean, because I think you're right. That probably will mean that case first. It's good that it was,
Well, it's civil. It's civil right now, but you're right that the same things that find
yeah.
liability, right, in a civil case can be used to prosecute
No, wait.
people
The
on
Bragg
crime.
case, that's a civil case. I thought that's different from, there's one case where it's a business case, it's a civil case, business practices. But the Bragg, the first indictments to come down, that's a felony, and it had to do with business document fraud.
Oh yeah,
And
that's right.
so, when you were saying the Bragg decision, were you referring to that, or you were referring to the business liability civil case that where they went after Donald Trump Jr.?
Yeah, I was talking about the business
Yeah.
liability.
Well, that's going to be
That's what.
significant too, because it, this is a man who, if he loses that,
No, you're right. The Bragg case is a
yeah,
DA case. If it's a DA case,
yeah,
it's a crime.
and yeah, because that was one of the first of the big indictments to come down, criminal indictments. The rest,
Yeah, I think that's going to get slowed down. I was really thinking of the civil case.
okay, well,
Yeah,
but still, even the civil case. I mean, he's already lost the civil case on sexual liability, and with E. Jean Carroll. But this one, would you want to vote for a man as chief executive of the United States, who is, has been found, liable in this business case in New York, and can no longer do business in New York. I mean, I can't see how Republicans, even those who are so loyal, can kind of, how they can look away and say, well, it's okay.
They're not looking away privately. Publicly, they're looking away because their constituents, their constituents see all of this stuff against Trump as
Yeah,
being fake. It is absolutely 100% fake. They don't believe in any of the indictments. They don't believe in any of the cases. They don't believe in any of the evidence, and they because of the whole process of containing the vote in their own constituent
yeah, yeah,
states, right? Right? They've worked themselves into this corner. I mean, they haven't just painted themselves into the
yeah,
corner; they have constructed prison
yeah,
bars and stuck themselves into the corner. And there's no way that that will change because they're in red
yeah.
states. So the red state voters are going to continue this process in their favor.
Yeah, the real sad thing is that some people think that, oh well, it's the savior, or the answer to all this is getting Haley or Christie, Christie, or having Christie step down and having the votes go to Haley. But Haley she's got a lot of negatives on that she
Yeah,
carries with her.
Christie actually looks like a
Yeah,
moderate
compared to Haley, I know, and
at this
I
point.
just
You
and
know?
Chris Christie, I don't know, I like him sometimes, but I mean, if you're looking for someone who's an anti-Trump, he at least has the courage to speak out.
That's the guy.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely. He's
the
the
only
only
one.
one.
Yeah,
He's the
and
only
notice we
one.
have just left out DeSantis because I think he is. I think he's done. I think he's. I don't see him as a. I don't see
Yeah.
him
And
as
his
an.
I know people who are still giving DeSantis money have, they've got some loose screws or they've got a really extremely low
Or
IQ. I mean,
they just hope. I don't know. I just don't see him as coming back. Uh,
no way.
yeah,
I agree. I
especially
agree.
after the New Hampshire thing with.
Well, especially after what he's done with the
Oh
abortion
yeah,
laws in Florida.
abortion. Yeah,
I mean, there is a large contingent of Republican
mhm,
women who are now lining up against not only against the laws in Florida, but they're lining up against
yeah,
DeSantis as a presidential candidate. So
yeah.
he's done.
I think he can wait another 4 years.
Let's see. Oh yeah, right. Let's see him run in another
Uh,
4 years. Maybe he'll wear different
yeah,
boots
I don't
next
know.
time.
All right, so a couple other things before we say goodbye, because this has been quite a week. We haven't even mentioned the. Well,
Harvard.
we can mention Harvard. They're still making news that hearing that Stefanik used to beat up on the academics. And there's so
Oh
many
yeah,
different aspects of the story. I mean, and they
yeah.
didn't even address anti-Semitism. That's what gets me. They didn't even talk about all the things that the colleges are doing for anti-Semitism. The whole thing got
Yeah.
hung up on the hypothetical of, do you denounce, or do is this against the code if someone calls for genocide, which was like, you can understand why the president's answered in that way because they're academics, they're
Yeah.
not political bullies like Elise Stefanik.
They're looking at
Yeah,
free speech. They're looking at the line of
yeah,
free speech, and the fact that universities are supposed to be a little more permissive in terms of free
free speech,
speech.
but also
Uh,
look, they were talking about private universities, and to have the government come down on these private universities. Well, the First Amendment doesn't pertain to Harvard even as a private university, right? I
right,
mean, really,
right.
Congress shall make no laws against federal, public, that kind of thing, but against a private corporation like Harvard or any of the other universities
Yeah.
in question. That's one of
Well, they sure the law historically surely protected the interests of white male wealthy only uh,
Yeah.
clubs like our own
What private clubs
you know.
like the Dima Salon,
Yeah.
Caballeros Dima Salon.
No, I was thinking more of the two golf courses out in the south end
Oh,
of
the
the
Olympic
city
Club.
here. The
Yeah.
Olympic Club,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that what's come out of the Harvard hearings are a couple of things. Number one, billionaires. I mean, because Stefanik was aided by a billionaire hedge fund guy, this Ackman guy, who I think he has pulls he was a Harvard alum, but maybe he had something to do with Penn, and he was going to pull money out, away from Penn, away from Harvard, and alum, and so people are talking about, well, do alumni have that kind of power? Well, they
Hell
do.
yes.
Yeah, they already do have that
Yeah.
power. But is
Yes.
it different now because you do it in a public political forum and say, you do X, I'll pull my money. You do Y, I'll keep it in. And Penn folded really, and Harvard
Yeah.
stood fast. And to its credit, because a lot of people, as you pointed out when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, may not have realized that Claudine Gay is this African American, the first African American female to be president of Harvard. What I didn't like about the fallout is that a lot of people, I think the billionaire hedge fund owner, Ackman, began to talk about how Harvard was using diversity or other kinds of, you know, non-meritorious kind of standards in picking Claudine Gay. And people started attacking her for alleged plagiarism, which does appear that there were some minor infractions, but not enough to take her down as president.
Yeah, the infractions were like not not showing stuff that wasn't hers, in a presenting it in a manner that seemed as though it was hers. Okay, it was simply not citing them properly. That's
Citation.
different.
So they were there.
Yep.
She wasn't passing it off as her own, but she may not have she made the citation correctly in footnotes and whatnot. This is small stuff, but if you are fighting tooth and nail, on this issue, and she is in your way, you would think it's life and death, and
Yeah, that's
that's
right.
one of the unfortunate things about this whole thing. Now, uh, Harvard is. I think one of the things about Harvard is they're going through a period now because of the SCOTUS decision. They've got a number
Yeah.
of, you know, slaveholders who are on names of buildings and names. They're going through a reckoning. In some ways, Claudine Gay is the right person, but this was a political power move by people with money to try to embarrass her and get her out. And I'm glad that she's holding steady. And a number of faculty signed petitions, some general faculty, including Lawrence Tribe, who was outspoken against what Gay said.
The genocide issue. Yeah,
Yeah, he was
genocide
he was
comments.
against what she said, uh, at the hearing, but he signed this letter protecting her. So there was general faculty, but also there was black, African American faculty and students and alums who wrote a letter to support Gay. So there are people out there watching her back, and I'd like to see her succeed. I think it's terrible that that we had to go through this, but the funny thing is, um,
They were not
that
well
they were,
prepared. The three presidents were not well prepared. I was really surprised at how unprepared they were for a very
yeah,
predictable attack. If not by Stefanik, then some other
yeah,
right winger at a hearing like that. You've seen them do this kind of stage a performance
yeah,
before, and Stefanik really saw this as her chance
Well,
to
she
shine.
did. She let him have it, and I wrote in diverse issues in higher education, and also on the Aldif blog, that this could be the new anti-civil rights movement of the 21st century,
There you go.
which is
I
getting
agree.
rid of all. Now, I didn't know about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. I didn't
Equity.
know about that until I started my stint as an adjunct a few years back. It wasn't known as that when I taught there prior.
No, it
It
wasn't
was
given that
just
label.
diversity, or it was,
Diversity or
yeah.
affirmative action.
But
Well,
now it's DEI, and now there are people who want DEI to DIE, and
yeah, just like they wanted
yeah,
CRT to
yeah. And so
DIE.
I think this is what we have to prepare for. This is the new
Yeah.
fight. I mean, so and
Yep.
because I was surprised. I watched um, CNN, and they went through this whole bit about how, oh, the schools, the colleges, liberal bastions, this is what's wrong with our
Yeah.
college. This is why no one wants to go to college anymore. No,
And
yeah,
that's
there's
not the
other
reason.
reasons why people don't want to go to college.
There's other bigger reasons like
Cost, and
cost.
also lack of preparation.
People do cost
Yeah,
benefit analysis. And is it still true that I'm going to make $1 million more if I have a BA than if I didn't
yeah,
go to college? Or do I need a BA? Do I need a 4 year degree? I could just
yeah.
go to technical
Yeah,
school.
well,
You
it's
know,
true. It's always been true that you didn't need college, but people they bought into the myth that college was the thing that separated really smart people from just average people. So if you wanted the really smart people, they were the college types. And that was
right?
drummed into my head even as a little schoolboy.
Well, but what factors? This is a whole nother conversation. But what factors degraded the value of college education?
Well, some
Okay,
people would say the
and
right would say they didn't teach them the right thing. They were teaching them basket weaving. They were teaching them studies about African Americans and Asian Americans, that ethnic studies baloney. Not teaching them stuff to
right,
get them a
that's right,
job. And then it
that's
really
right,
gets to the question of, well, what's the humanities? What's the purpose of a liberal arts education? You know?
Oh, what's the purpose of
Yeah,
philosophy?
exactly. And I think that on the one hand, that battle has already been lost. People have
Yep,
said, yeah, you're right. Colleges, humanities, screw it. Humanities not important. And all the over.
it's not going to get you a job. They're even down on people who want to
I
be
know
teachers.
the
Is you don't make any money
yeah
as a
the
teacher.
importance
It's too
the importance
unstable.
of STEM, right? The technology stuff, overshadowing the
Yeah,
humanities. When I would much rather have someone who can say, yeah, I did a semester of Shakespeare. I would much rather have a guy like that or a person like that than someone who says, hey, I passed all my STEM classes. Shakespeare, who's that? You know, I'd much rather.
well, I'll tell you, there are two schools. And, well, I'll just talk about
Yeah,
SF State. There are two colleges that have really high unit requirements to satisfy their BA and BS standards for those degrees. And they're so high that students going through those programs say, I don't have any place that I can move in what everybody else has access to in general education for different kinds of courses. So I can barely get by because the unit demand is so high for my majors that I can't really look at other literature courses I might be interested in, art courses that I might be interested in, or for that matter, ethnic studies. And that they've been telling me that for
well,
40
that
years.
is a failure of our schools because I swear, uh, we need. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gen Ed. I'm a big fan of if you are going to skip Gen Ed, I think it's a sin to go through 4 years of college and not have a course in the Civil War, not have a course in World War II, not have a course on maybe a
Yeah.
course on all the wars. Civil War, World War
They
II.
have those courses. They have those courses, at most campuses. And in California, it's a requirement that you have something like that in either history or
Yeah.
politics. The problem is that they you can get 3 units credit and satisfy the state requirement by taking either or. At SF State in the late in the what 17 in no in 1980, I proposed a change to our fulfillment of the statutory requirement. Right, it is a legal
Mm.
requirement. Right, that people uh, get education in the Constitution, in politics, or in history. At SF State, I argued in 1980, and I won the argument. It's still true that we should have a 6 unit
Mm.
requirement, and it should be balanced. That there should be both history and politics or in law. That's that's where we're at now.
Well,
Okay, that's where
I
we're at,
mean,
and we've been there for the last 40 years, more than 40 years, because that passed in 80 or
well, I
81.
just think that they're kids. I see kids coming out of college. I don't see them as well rounded as they could be, and now
Yep,
the attacks on
exactly.
schools, and so schools are saying, well, we've got to figure out something here, and I don't know. To me, it just seems that that's if you have an educated public, especially college level, right? Because you see it on the polls where they can divide the demographic up to college educated, not college educated. You see where the divide is in our country. We would like to be more college educated if we can. College isn't for everybody, but common sense is for everybody, and
Yep,
people
yep.
forget that.
Well, I think there is a change, and I have to talk to people at City College of San Francisco, but I keep forgetting to bring up this specific issue. But in California, there's a move to have community colleges now grant BA
Oh yeah, I've
degrees.
heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I got to see what the status of that is. That of course is going to hurt the state colleges more than the
yeah.
UCs. Because the UC's emphasis is on graduate school and research, where they get a lot of their money. At SF State, it's the BAs and master's
Right.
degrees, right? So it's going to be interesting what that effect is,
All
right?
right. Well, all right. So much for Harvard. I mentioned, I think off camera, we're Harvard just admitted the first batch of its uh, the early admits, and of the early admits, 8.7% of the early admits got in. So if you want to go to Harvard, you should go early admissions, and because that keeps going up. It went up from 7.9% in 2021 to 8.7% this year. So that means 692 of 7,921 early action applicants were admitted to the class of 2028. Now, I mentioned this because Harvard's in the news, right, with the president thing, but also in the news because this is the first class admitted after the SCOTUS decision. And I notice
Right.
that it does not mention any mention of race, about the race of these people who they've admitted. And uh, so I'm wondering if that was intentional, that it was left out, because it says, so they made sure that applicants do not have access to individuals' information or aggregated data about race or ethnicity, updating training for application readers and alumni interviewers. So maybe because of that, they, when they put out this information today, they just very conveniently left out. They have all these other demographic information, like that 22.3% are from New England, but no mention at all about their race. That's probably intentional, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for stats, and I got the class of 2024 reflects the increasing diversity of the college's applicants.
Wait.
So it's
2024. We're
applicants.
talking about the class of 2028. That's the new one.
Oh, okay.
The one that came out today. 2028.
Class 2028. That was admissions college 2028. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Looking, I punched the wrong. Okay.
8.7% of undergraduate early applicants. So, it doesn't give
That's lower than it was in past years. You
No,
know
it's
that
higher.
it was as high as 13 or
It's
I don't know. I saw 13%, almost 14% several years
well,
ago. It feels
think
like 2018 or
well, all
something
right.
like that.
Compared to 2021 and 2022, it's up
Yeah, it's higher than
8.7.
that. Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, that mentions nothing about the race of the applicants, and so probably because that would show if the SCOTUS decision was a good thing or a bad thing. Because if there were fewer Asians or fewer or more blacks, more Hispanics,
Well, that's what I'm
that would
looking
be a good
for.
thing. If there were, you know, more Asians, then I guess you'd have to say it's kind of a wash. Or I guess you,
Yeah, from an AAPI perspective, that would be true. I don't see any stats yet on
yeah.
race.
So, and you know they have to have it, but
I
maybe they do that because this way they can say, we don't know the race. We didn't ask. We didn't consider it. Of course, we don't know. We're not going to put out the race. In the past, they did. In the past, they did put out race. So
Yep.
I'm just wondering that this is the really the reason, or this is a fallout of the SCOTUS decision.
I think logically it has to
Yeah.
be. I think
So yeah,
shouldn't really be a
but
question. I think it's real.
but it's still we would like to know, and certainly they would have to, they may not have included it in admissions, but maybe they don't want to include it now until the final tally because the final tally is then you can say, oh, the class is this. Right now, if they know how they're doing or now how badly or how good they're doing, it might have an effect on the rest of the people they admit
2028. Yeah.
regular.
Yep.
And
Yeah. I don't think they want to release DEI
yeah.
information yet,
So
but
interesting. Interesting how
I mean, they're open to a lot of criticism if their DEI looks good from an Asian
oh
American
yeah, yeah.
perspective or from a people of color
So
perspective.
I
I
yeah,
mean,
I just think that explains it and it makes sense. So so Dan, just generally about the news when we first came in, it's like there's just so much happening, and we're not even talking about the biggest things: Ukraine, Israel, and Hamas,
yeah.
and and this is a problem. I mean, we didn't talk about Oprah's weight loss. We didn't talk about that, so that's good. We didn't talk about Taylor Swift, so that's good. But we didn't mention Israel.
Or the fall of the
Yeah,
KC Chiefs.
we didn't mention that, but we didn't. We didn't also didn't mention Israel, Hamas. We didn't mention, um, you know, uh, the Ukrainians. Although the Ukrainians are getting the money, right? The authorization passed.
Man, that's really bad. That's really
What?
bad. That the Ukrainian funding is going to be delayed.
Well, wait. No, they got the money. They got some in the military defense. That may,
Sure, but that was presidential action. That wasn't
okay.
congressional.
So there was a holdup. No, there was one that was passed by Congress. That was um, the authorization, the military authorization. There was a supplemental that is also on the table. I don't know if that passed, but the first one passed yesterday, and it did not link the southern border. Fortunately, it did not, bring up that issue. But the fact that Ukraine may or may not get all the money it needs, that's a threat to all of us, and the United States and its standing, the world, our allies, and I don't think anyone really cares.
I'm looking for the funding that uh, came out of Congress yesterday,
Yeah,
and I can't find anything on it. Do you have that?
yeah. I just saw it. I saw it. It was the defense authorization, and it had money for Ukraine. I don't think it had money. It may not have had money for his. I mean, the thing that Joe Biden wanted to push was was a supplemental spending bill. And I don't know when that comes up or if that was part of
Okay,
it.
I got it. House passes crucial defense bill last minute sprint.
Yeah.
Pay
So,
pay raise for troops and Ukraine funding. Okay. Okay. That is a
so
little bit of relief. I mean, this winter is going to be it. I mean, I hope I hope Mr. Putin is watching that because
yeah,
he was very uptick yesterday.
yeah.
Because he was getting ready to congratulate the GOP on all the assistance.
Well, I mean, the GOP is helping him, but this what I found offensive was this linkage to the work on the southern border that the you know that the GOP
Well,
insists.
what makes it hypocritical is the Democrats have tried to move forward all throughout the Obama administration, and the Trump administration, and the Biden administration, and guess who keeps hanging them up?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's about time we had some kind of immigration reform, and the
Oh,
fact that
it's
we can't get
huge.
it. I mean, it's been more than almost 40 years, so we
Yes,
real
yes,
real
yes.
immigration.
The last time was I don't know why people don't bring up the fact that the last time there was significant
'80s.
progress on this, Reagan. It was Reagan.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking mid 80s,
Yeah.
man. You
80s.
know,
It's just amazing. I mean, I was on television in the '80s. That's when we had immigration reform.
and you were so young. You were
Yeah,
such a
and
young
that
guy.
was the reason why we had it. They said, "Here's a meal." But no, I just think that God, there are better things. And then you see the Hunter Biden stuff, and you see the impeachment stuff, and you see all this stuff that is being thrown out.
I think they ought to put Hunter in jail. I think they ought to find him in contempt and put him in that little congressional holding cell. That nobody talks about. What can the sergeant at arms do?
Yeah.
In each house of Congress, they can get somebody who's held in contempt and put them in that little jail. So I
Oh,
think they ought to go ahead and do that.
then
Put their
they
money where
maybe
their mouth is.
maybe they should hold Jim Jordan in contempt for his past deeds,
That time will come. He's
ignoring.
going to get voted back into office because he's a red state guy. So,
Yeah.
like a lot of those people who had a lot to do with not only January 6th, but all of the other criminal enterprises having to do with elections, right?
Mhm.
They're all going to get served. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, if the Democrats, the question is whether or not the Democrats have got the intestinal fortitude. I will keep it there rather than moving towards the genitalia.
yeah. I don't.
I,
I don't know if it's if it's up to the Democrats. I think that the problem is I saw a piece on CNN uh, this week that had to do with these. They had a redneck parade in Louisiana, and they asked people there at the redneck parade where they were tossing toilet paper to the people. It's sort of like a Mardi Gras parade, but instead of candy and necklaces and things, they were tossing toilet paper to the people. It's sort of like a spoof, but it's not a spoof. This is a poor area in Louisiana, and the reporter asked people there, who are you for? Who do you support for the presidency? And to a person, they all said Donald Trump. We need Trump. Without Trump, we wouldn't be in this mess. And it was really depressing. They really honestly thought that Donald Trump was the reason why, that Donald Trump was going to be the savior, and that Joe Biden is the reason why we're in this economic funk that we're in, and the Democrats, this is the reason we're in trouble. Can't wait for Donald
what was
Trump
the
to
racial breakdown?
a white poor, and there were some blacks in there too who said, here I am, and I got no job. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. If I have a paycheck, it was all like, and this was a poor rural Louisiana city. It was sad, and I just said, "Oh," I just shook my head because,
That kind of holds true
yeah,
nationally.
yeah, yeah, and
You go to the areas where people are underpaid and underrepresented as well, right?
yeah, oh yeah. So I want to be hopeful, but I know that our votes will be negated easily by those people who I saw being interviewed in that television
Yeah,
report.
that's one of the reasons I worry about the vote coming from blue states like California.
What, the
You know,
people won't show up?
they'll show up and they'll vote, but the question is, how much impact does that have with regard to the electoral college, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
uh, you know, the orange man lost both elections with
Yeah.
regard to the popular vote, and the
Yeah.
second time was 100% increase over the gap. The first time it was under 4 million was the gap, and the second time was over 7 million was the gap in terms of electoral, actual votes. So it all comes down to what some of the pundits focus on, and that is swing states,
Yeah.
and especially swing states that recently have tended to the red. You know,
So, like Michigan,
yeah,
Arizona,
yep,
Ohio,
maybe
well,
even Nevada, maybe even Nevada.
Nevada, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. That's
Wisconsin.
why those battleground states are battlegrounds for a reason. Hey, listen, Dan. I always appreciate your insight. I always appreciate you coming on. I got the Christmas decorations up now.
All right,
And
yeah, we do too. We have ours up.
no,
We
I
got
mean on the show. I mean on the show here. See, like I got the Christmas.
our neighbors did a really cool thing, and people who have trees in their front yard, especially near the curb,
Mhm.
everybody got nice Christmas bows.
Oh, nice, nice.
So the block looks really cool.
Well, great. Well, listen. Uh, we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much for your insight.
Yeah, I hope we get together before Christmas. We'll see what
Yeah,
happens, but try and pick a weekday, dude.
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we will. We will. All right. Thank you very much. There he is, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend,
Peace out.
College
Peace out.
College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. Yeah, man. It's always there's always a lot to talk to with Dan. He's just and he has an opinion about the news. He has an opinion about the news. So hopefully he'll be back next week. Hey, thank you for being here on the show. We'll put this up on the replay. Check out my Ohtani observations. I'll call it that. My Ohtani observations. I'll be sending it out on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. Look for it over the weekend. Hey, catch this show if you're catching it on replay. You can catch it on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, youtube.com/Emil Amok 1. You can catch it on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also on Twitter, or rather X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok. And you can see some shows on amok.com. Some shows. So it's God, there's just so much going on, right? And I just you get the feel of the holidays. So I'll play some replay stuff over the weekend. Play APA 101 with my friend Theo Gonzalez. If you're looking for a book, a nice little coffee table kind of thing, that's a good book. Teach you Asian Pacific American history and 101 objects from one of the APA curators at the Smithsonian, Theo Gonzalez. All right, so watch the replays. 624, a good one. 623, a good one. This is a good one. 625 with Dan. We'd like to end with a little meditation. I think this is what Draymond Green needs. A little loving kindness. First, you turn it to yourself, and you forgive yourself, and you love yourself, and then you show it to others. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal